All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming. My name's Eric Palmer. I'm the Director of Fisheries for Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and we're going to be talking about the proposed changes to the fishing regulations that would take effect in January of 2026. This is a hearing on behalf of the Fish and Wildlife Board. We do have a board member present. If you'd just introduce yourself, please.
Bob Hammers from Madison County.
Thanks, Bob. And the department will be running the meeting, but it's a meeting to get public input for the Fish and Wildlife Board to consider as part of the rulemaking process. So we'll start with a brief presentation to go over what the proposed changes are, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and that is for folks to ask questions about the proposal so that everybody understands what's on the table. It's not public comment at that period, it's just to make sure that everybody understands the proposed rules, and then we'll shift into the official public comment. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. We'll go down that for everybody who signed in and indicated that they want to make public comments. We'll ask folks to limit themselves to 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who didn't sign up but decides, in the process that they want to make public comments. And then we'll stay around afterwards to answer questions as well. During the public comment period, we will be taking notes to make sure that we can share them with the board members who aren't present. So we might ask you, identify yourself, town of residence, and then if we aren't able to hear or understand something, we might ask you to repeat it, just so that we get it in the record. So any questions on the process tonight? All right, I'll turn it over to Margaret. Margaret, you were gonna MC the meeting? And I know that the entrance was a little bit hard to find, so there's some folks that are still wandering in. If anyone has process questions, I might do a quick repeat of what I just said.
Thanks everyone for coming out. My name's Margaret Murphy. I'm a fish program manager with the Fish and Wildlife Department. And tonight we have two of our biologists, Sean Good and Judd Kratzer, that will be going through the proposed changes to our fishing rules. And then, as Eric said, we'll open that up for any question and answer before we get to the comments. I will be the one timing you, so you'll hear me letting you know when it's time, and we ask you to respectfully end your comment at that point. So who's up first?
Yeah.
Sean.
We were just wondering if we should dim the lights a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Are the screens visible okay to everybody? There might be one set that you can kill at the front, Eric, and still leave the ones on the back. No? Yeah, that's working.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, too far. That's good. Yeah, the front ones are out now.
Don't touch anything.
All right, so there's sort of three categories of fishing regulation changes that are being presented here tonight. The first one has to do with bait fish. The second one are some changes being proposed for trout fishing, but only in certain areas around the state. And then the third one is to do with panfish and commercial fishing. So the one that we're going to start with is bait fish. I'll give that, and then Judd will step in and give the ones about trout fishing, because most of the changes are in the Northeast Kingdom, which is the waters that he's responsible for. And then he'll also do the panfish and commercial fishing section of the presentation. So just to start out, a little bit of background about bait fish regulations in general. Everybody in this room remembers back in 2007 when viral hemorrhagic septicemia was spreading through the Great Lakes and was considered a threat to a lot of the area around here. Regulations were changed pretty dramatically at that point, and they've been revised again since then several times, and this is another proposal to do it yet again. Most of the revisions that we've done, and again the ones that we're presenting tonight, are designed to present more fishing opportunities. The changes in 2007 and 2008 really rolled things back and made it very restrictive on bait fish use, and we're continuously stepping back away from that now. And again, it's mostly to provide more opportunities to use bait fish, to trap your own, to move with bait fish throughout the state, but still staying within the bounds of biological protections that came along with some of those earlier regulation changes that prevent risks that are also associated with bait fish use. Things like the potential to spread invasive species and fish diseases in the water and things like that. So most of what I'm going to present today are some minor and simple housekeeping changes with the bait fish regulations, just kind of tightening up some of the language, make it more understandable, clarify some things, and then there's a few changes that are actually made to, as I said, increase those opportunities for using bait fish. So the first one is just really a clarification. This is kind of a housekeeping rule. All of these slides will show you what the current rule is and then what we're proposing to change for that section of the bait fish rule. So starting here right now, this is a clarification. The rule never really addressed moving bait fish away from waters, which you can do right now within the zone system as long as waters aren't restricted because of an invasive species concern, but it never really said whether fish could be transported alive or dead away from those waters, provided that it's a non-restricted water and then used back in non-restricted waters in that same zone. So that section of the rule is being proposed just to put those words in that language, which just clarifies the fact that you can transport live bait fish away from a water to use another day as long as it's on that same water or within that zone. The second section, second change in the rule is an increased opportunity, one that we've heard from anglers a lot consistently over the last few years about some of the gear restrictions that are currently in place. In particular, it was about minnow traps. So the standard minnow trap that's always been in our regulations is an 18-inch long minnow trap with a 1-inch opening. People didn't like that because it restricts the size of the bait you can catch. People want to be able to catch bigger suckers, bigger golden shiners that wouldn't fit in those standard traps. So we're proposing to change that, the dimensions of a minnow trap in the rule to be 24 inches long with a 2.5-inch opening. This again will increase those opportunities for anglers to be able to catch those bigger bait they want to use for, say, pike or lake trout. It's not the kind of bait fish that you generally see a lot widely available in bait shops. One of the concerns about this initially was that it might also allow those same traps to catch species we don't want caught, like trout, if you're trapping in a trout stream or something like that. But Judd actually did a study on quite a few waters up in the Northeast Kingdom, a comparative study looking at standard traps and traps the size that we're proposing to see just how common or prevalent it was to catch game fish in those minnow traps. And he really didn't find much of anything. He can speak if he wants to on that, but it was a well-done study, and we didn't find that really there's any risk in going to a larger size in terms of threatening or have the potential to catch those game fish. So that's one of the proposals. Sticking along the lines with trout and trout waters, we have had a rule in place for a long time where there are waters that we considered or called seasonally closed waters. These are waters that you couldn't do anything on after trout season closed on October 31st. And that included bait trapping. You can't fish in any way on those. The proposal that we have here in place right now is to allow the use of minnow traps only on seasonally closed waters. And again, it kind of plays back into that study that Judd did and the potential for minnow trappers to actually catch trout in a minnow trap. This only pertains to minnow traps. It's important to note that. There are other ways people can use to catch bait fish themselves, seine nets, umbrella nets, cast nets, things like that. But this would only allow the use of minnow traps on seasonally closed trout waters after trout season closed. And again, that's an opportunity to just kind of allow people to, more opportunity to catch bait fish in the sort of late winter after trout season closed, but before ice fishing starts. Again, minor housekeeping, but we never had language in the rule that stipulated how often minnow traps had to be checked, so we're just saying once a week. This is just to try to reduce the mortality of fish that might be in those traps, making sure people are checking them regularly enough. So that's pretty straightforward. The use of fish eggs as bait is a pretty big tradition in certain areas of the state. Again, Northeast Kingdom is one of the focal points for that, where people take eggs out of steelhead and use them as bait later. The previous rule didn't allow people to take those eggs home and then even bring them back to the same river to use. So, that people like to take them home, cure them, tie up row sacks, things like that. Previous rule didn't let you do that. So the proposal here is to eliminate the transport prohibition in that rule that will allow people to take eggs out of a fish, take them home, process them however you want, bring them back, and use them on the same water body again. Again, this is a hopefully increasing additional opportunities for people to use that as bait. We're making a little bit of change to the baitfish receipt, not getting rid of it completely, but it will no longer be a carbon copy. It'll just be one copy, which will be given to the angler. Bait shops will not be required to retain that second copy, carbon, in a box. Again, we're changing any of the, a couple of the things that are on there. We had time of sale on there, that's going away. We had a place where the angler had to sign it, that's also going away in the proposal. But like I said, we're not actually completely eliminating the use of bait fish receipts right now. They are still looked at as having some value in terms of educating the public. We have some outreach messages on there about invasive species spread prevention and things like that. And it still is a tool for enforcement to follow up on potential bait fish violations that they encounter. So one change we're proposing to the wild baitfish endorsement, that's been in place for a few years now, so hopefully most people are familiar with that. You can take read some educational material on our website, take a course, pass a test, and be able to add a free endorsement to your license that lets you go out and trap wild baitfish. We're adding sort of a condition to that will allow people to trap baitfish who do not have that endorsement, as long as they are accompanied with somebody who does. So that just basically allows somebody to sort of get exposed to that activity, and sort of be mentored a little bit. Maybe allow for guides to take clients out that don't have the endorsement, do some baitfish trapping, and get inexperienced anglers sort of more involved in that. And then hopefully they'll move on and get that endorsement themselves. But that's a pretty simple and straightforward proposal that I think changes the opportunities again for people to use bait. That's it. Judd can step in now on the trout stuff.
All right, thank you, Sean. Yes, now we'll move into rules related to trout and trout fishing. First one is Mud Pond in Hyde Park, which is currently open to fishing year-round, and we are proposing that we have this one only open to fishing from the second Saturday in April to October 31st, which is our traditional open water trout season. The reason for this is a few years ago we found that this pond has a healthy population of wild brook trout. We do not have many ponds in the state that are like that have robust populations of wild brook trout, which are very susceptible to ice fishing. And so those ponds we manage by not allowing winter fishing on them. So we want to add this one to that list to protect the wild brook trout population in this pond. Next one is Deerfield River, a portion of it, and I'll show you what portion on the next slide. This one currently has a test waters designation, so it has a daily limit of 2 trout, and we are proposing that we make this a permanent rule. This was a test water designation because we are stocking larger 2-year-old brook trout in this reach to provide a special fishing opportunity. We have several reaches like this around the state, and we wanted to evaluate that, see if that was going to be popular, and we wanted to continue it. We've completed the study. It has been popular. We do want to continue it. So we want to make this test waters designation a permanent rule. And this just shows you where that reach is. I think that might be described in the handout there if you needed to see those details. Next up is Lake Memphremagog lake trout, which currently is general regulations. So you can keep 2 lake trout per day with a minimum length of 18 inches. We are proposing to reduce the daily bag limit to 1 and increase the minimum length limit to 24 inches. This would match Quebec's rules. Quebec stocks lake trout in the lake. They're trying to restore natural reproduction of lake trout. Most of the lake trout habitat is in Quebec. They do come onto our side of the border in the winter. And Quebec has made major changes to come in line with our rules on salmon and rainbow trout, which is what we stock. So we're working together to manage this fishery. This matches Quebec's rules and hopefully will help with that goal of restoring natural reproduction in this lake. All right, next one, there are several streams that are currently closed to fishing from the second Saturday in April through May 31st. This is to protect concentrations of spawning rainbow trout, and we are proposing that we start this basically 1 month earlier, March 16th. The reasons for this, first of all, it's a simplification because there are already rivers that have this closure, spring closure. So instead of having 2 different closures, now we have 1 in the spring. And since 2022, anglers can fish just most rivers and streams with artificial flies and lures and practice catch and release. So there's fishing now that can happen in places where rainbow trout are concentrating. So we want to extend that a little bit sooner so that we cover those rainbow trout that are getting in the end of March. And this is the list of where those are. I don't expect you to be able to read all that, but if you needed to, these are all listed on the handout that was available back at the door. All right, next up is Valley Brook, which is a tributary to Seymour Lake. This one is currently closed to fishing in the month of October. We believe that this was put in place to protect spawning salmon. There are really no salmon to speak of spawning in this tributary. There are some brown trout, but we don't feel like we need this closure to protect any fish in that stream, and this simplifies the rules. So we're proposing that we just apply general regulations on this stream. All right, so next we'll move into the rules related to panfish and commercial fishing. The first one is on Berlin Pond and Stiles Pond, which again, these had a test waters designation on them with a reduced limit, so only 10 yellow perch per day. The reason this, and we want to make this a permanent rule. The history with these are both drinking water supplies, and for a long time people thought they were not legally allowed to access them and fish them. Turns out in 2012 and 2013 people started fishing both of these ponds and found that there were populations of panfish that were dominated by large fish, large yellow perch especially, but large pumpkin seeds as well. So we applied this 10 fish limit to try to protect that, maintain that size structure, maintain populations with large proportion of large yellow perch. And we've studied that since, and it was successful. These populations still have large numbers of large perch in them, and so we want to make this a permanent rule and try to maintain that size structure in these 2 ponds. All right, next up is panfish limits on inland waters. And so when we say inland waters, that's everything but Champlain. The current limits are shown here. Crappies have a minimum length and a daily limit of 25. Yellow perch have a daily limit of 50, and the other species that we're calling panfish have no limit currently. And this is the proposed rule. So we're proposing to group all these fish into one category called panfish, and have a daily limit of 50 fish, 50 panfish total with no more than 25 of each of those species in the group. So essentially, crappies stay the same, yellow perch go from 50 down to 25, and the other species go from no limit to 25. And the reasons for this, we have evidence of loss of large panfish in some waters. We did a survey in 2022 that was focused at sunfish anglers, and we found really good support for a much reduced limit on sunfish in particular. And these rules would match New Hampshire's regulations. Again, these would only be applied on waters other than Champlain. Our reasons for not including Champlain is that this is a large lake, plenty of room for anglers to spread out and fish, abundant panfish populations, and we know that over 90% of commercial harvest occurs on Lake Champlain. All right, the next one, this one would apply to the entire state, and this has to do with the sale of crappies, which can currently be bought and sold, and the proposed rule is to prohibit them from sale or purchase. The justification for this is that this would treat crappies as other recreationally important game species like we do with trout, bass, salmon, walleye, pike. These fish have a high value that incentivizes bad behavior, which I'll talk about more on the next slide. They also have the high value, we believe, also incentivizes the introduction of crappies to new waters. Black crappie in particular is a species that we see showing up in waters more than other species. And yeah, we can't verify what the reasons are for that, but it's possible that at least some of the motivation could be to establish new populations to sell. And we know that from 1998 to 2023, only about 4% of commercial sales by weight were crappie. So more on the high value incentivizing bad behavior. Even though they're only 4% by weight of the total commercial sale, it's a much larger percentage of our law enforcement challenges related to panfish. We have people that it's very tempting to go over the limit because of the higher value, and we have cases of people importing them from other states where crappies cannot be sold, so they can be sold here. All right, the next one that also would apply statewide is the fish seller's endorsement. Currently, there's no requirement related to people that would sell fish. The proposed rule would state that no angler may sell fish in the state of Vermont without first obtaining a valid Vermont fishing license and a fish seller's endorsement. And the main motivation for this is it provides us with information on how many people are actually doing this activity, which we don't currently know. Related to the fish seller's endorsement would be a fish seller's reporting requirement, which currently there is no requirement, but if passed, the fish seller would be required to report, similar to what the fish buyers do, the pounds of fish sold by species and the percentage from Lake Champlain. And again, the purpose of this would be data collection. And just some more details on this. So the fish seller's endorsement would be added to the angler's license for free. There'd be no charge for this seller's endorsement. And when the fish seller wants to renew their fish seller's endorsement each year, they'll be prompted to answer some questions, kind of like when you buy your license currently, you're prompted to answer some questions. So if you're going to want the fish seller's endorsement, you'd be prompted to report the pounds of fish sold by species by quarter for that previous year, the numbers of time that you sold fish, and the percentage of fish that came from Lake Champlain. All right. Then this one is just some clarification of some language that applies to both the fish buyer's reports and the fish seller's reports. Basically making it clear that we want complete reports that are not falsified, and giving us the authority to be able to revoke the fish buyer's permit or the fish seller's endorsement if we didn't get complete and accurate reports. All right, so just as a review of how the process goes, so we've given this presentation. Next is going to be a question and answer time where you can ask clarifying questions of us and we can provide answers. Anything you say in that time is not going to be part of the official record, but you can ask questions. For anything that you want to be on the official record for the board to review, that would be after that during the public comment time. So we'll close out, at some point we'll close out the question and answer time, move into public comments. It'd be great if, for those of you when you do public comments, if you could come up here and address everybody, that'd be great. Again, we'll be taking notes so that those can get to the board. And if for some reason you're not able to comment tonight, or you have friends that want to comment that couldn't make it tonight or couldn't make it to the other meetings that we have, they can submit comments all the way up through April 7th with a phone call or email or snail mail. And the board will be taking their second vote April 30th. So, yes?
So, just over here.
Oh, for questions, yeah, you can stay where you are.
Kevin Lawrence from Newberry. You folks are famous for collecting so much good data. I think that's true in, up and down the streams of Vermont, all over the place. You do electroshocking, but I'm not seeing any data that suggests that fish are getting smaller in terms of panfish. Can you provide some of that?
Well, I think one example would be the Stiles, kind of the opposite end of it, the Stiles and Berlin Pond case, where those were populations that had basically no fishing on them for 100 years or so. And we had these populations that were dominated by large panfish. And we applied the reduced limit for yellow perch, and that seems to have helped, that we still have large yellow perch in both those waters. So there's that.
100 acres though, right? I mean, they're not very big bodies of water. I'm thinking about like Dunmore, Harvey's Lake, lots of places where you go. You're not providing any data that shows that these fish are actually smaller compared to 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I wonder if you had any data.
We don't have it in a nice format that we can lay out. I would just say, I don't think I'm alone in this. I think a lot of us have our secret places that we like to fish. I know I have a few of them, and they're places that don't get fished much. And I like to go there because they don't get fished much, and they have larger panfish in them. So I haven't gone out and sampled those as part of my work, but that's something I know as an angler, and I think others can attest to that as well.
When you present this to the Fish and Wildlife Board, again, can you include some data on specific ponds and lakes where this is an issue, rather than using a narrative approach?
Oh, well, and there's two ways to look at it too. So we can look at it as, let's wait until things get really bad and document that and then act, or we could act now and protect what we do have currently.
But I'm not sure that there's evidence of that unless you share the data, is my point. I keep coming back to that you folks are great at collecting data. You electroshock all over the place, you record, you're very good at it. You're respected biologists. I just don't see it in your presentation, and I don't think that's fair to the public. I think you have that data out there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think just one comment about that. I think one thing to keep in mind is we do have data from 30 years of angler opinion surveys that show a clear increase in effort being directed towards panfish fishing. They're becoming more and more popular. It's not just in Vermont, it's across the range of the Midwest and everywhere where states out there have taken action on managing panfish. It's nothing we've done really. We have some data on perch specifically going back into the late 90s, but quite honestly, a lot of the department's management activities over years have been focused on things like bass and trout and salmon and walleye. The big flashy sport fish that most people grew up targeting. With the shift in effort towards panfish fishing and the way it's changing now, especially with things like electronics and forward-facing sonar and all that kind of stuff. There's more, effort being put on these species, but we've never spent any time as a department actually measuring them. We put up all our effort into the other sport fish, and we've never really done any concerted panfish surveys out there on, lakes across the state. They've been part of other efforts where we've collected some data, but like, Judd said, it's not something that we have really spent a lot of time collecting right now. So we're looking at the quality we think we have, and, trying to put ourselves in a position to maintain that. So, but having said that, Judd and I are both on a team with a few other biologists that has been tasked now for the last 2 years to start generating plans to survey and assess panfish populations across the state. We're only 2 years into it. We really, that's going to take a while. So we want to, get things in place that really, give us some protections now for the quality that we already know we have.
I don't know what order the hands went up. You've had your hand up for a while, so we'll go you, then Mr. Dunkling, then over here. Does that seem okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Bert Salty from Vermont. My question is, when is all this information, what date is it going to be on the website?
Say that again.
What date is all this information going to be on the website?
What we presented here? Well, yeah, I think there's something up there like it now. There's maybe not, this presentation isn't up there, but
What we're doing tonight, when's it going to be up on the website?
I don't know.
I can
Yeah.
answer that question. We don't typically put these type of hearing presentations up on the website. We put the proposed rule on the website because that's what the board is voting on.
Why?
It's just more,
The public can't.
let me answer your question, please. The reason we haven't done it is that these are more informal presentations, Q&A. They're meant to provide some of the information and then have this kind of question and answer. What the board is voting on is on the website, the proposed changes. We are doing a virtual meeting on next Monday, and it's possible for us to record that and put that recording up on the website, and we could certainly do that.
You said it's possible, but will it be done?
I'm not an IT person, so yeah, I will follow up. I'm not going to promise, but I think that we've done that in the past, so we should be able to.
I'll be looking for
Okay, all this is public information. We're not trying to hide anything, but we typically don't do the hearings and put them on our website, but I think we would be able to do that with the virtual hearing. And we certainly heard your question about providing more data for the board.
Might anything happen about that? It's great that you're hearing it, but you're making a proposal without sharing any information. So we feel good about today's fish populations is a great comment, but what are those fish populations that we feel so good about is another question. You have the data, I know you do.
I'm happy to talk with you more about that, Kevin. Right now, we just want to make sure that we're getting
Sure.
everybody's
There's other
questions
questions,
answered.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted Sean to back up his words that there's more pan fishermen now than there was 30 years ago before you guys drove the Canadians all home. You got the data to prove that there's more pan fishermen now than there was 30 years ago? Because I don't think you do.
We do. The last time we did so we do what we call a statewide angler survey every 10 years. We've done 4 of them now, right? 90, 2,000,
I
10,
think
20.
that your question is a little bit different, though. What Sean's talking about in the statewide angler survey is the proportion of anglers who say they're fishing for panfish. It's
Right.
not the total number.
You got the number of pan fishermen now that you had 30 years ago.
Right, so you're making a different point, that the proportion might be going up, but the
You
total
guys are
numbers are
making
going
it out
down.
like it's not a different point. You're saying there's more pan fishermen now than there was 30 years ago.
I didn't say that. I said that the effort being directed towards panfish
Yeah, I
is
saw
higher
that
now.
on the study from New York the other day for their creel survey, that perch was, what, an average of 3.4 hours to catch one perch? Who the hell is fishing these perch? That was on, you guys had it on your webpage from the panfish meeting. Or not the panfish, the state of the lake meeting. Yes, 3.4 hours for one perch, come on.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, what we want to do in this Q&A is make sure that folks understand what's being proposed.
I want to make sure that there's actually some truth being told here, because I know how biased the department is against people that sell fish. I can figure out why, because if I was taking them home and composting my garden with them, it would be perfectly fine, but because I sell them, it's not fine, and I don't see the difference. And what I really don't understand is when you go to this wanting data from guys that sell fish, what is that about? It's not the guys that sell fish that should matter to you. It should be everybody that fishes should be the data that you're worried about. Because last I knew, the department wasn't an IRS agent. They're here to protect the species. And you're not studying the whole thing. You're specifically seeking out one group. You're not looking at how many of these panfish tournaments affect this, how many commercial fishermen are caught, how many are eaten, just taken home and eaten. The numbers are all there. They all count. It's not just one thing. You're singling out one thing here, and it's not right.
I think you're shifting into public comment.
Well,
And again, we're going to have a time for you to say that.
I could spend
And-
2 hours here and probably teach you guys something.
Yeah, and there's lots of opportunities for comment, like Judd said, and some of
I
them
know
are
it
in
amazes
that.
me that you guys even have this meeting, and you don't take the time, not one of you has come to me and said, hey, Paul, you're the biggest fish buyer in the state of Vermont. Let's sit down and talk for a couple hours and see what you've got to say. What can you tell me? Not one of you has even made the phone call.
And know the numbers that are leaving the state by just him. The one guy that can tell you everything you need to know.
And you
And
want
then, for
the-
some reason, we're giving you false information, but you're gonna take how many fishermen in the state, and they're gonna give you true and accurate data on your
Yeah,
endorsement?
how's
Come
this
on.
make sense?
He has to have
you're
permits to
getting
get them out of the state with poundage on them.
You're telling me that the reports we give you, you don't believe them. They might not be accurate. But you're gonna take the word from a fisherman, that he's gonna tell you what pond, his favorite pond, he caught those fish out of. He's gonna tell you that? Bull.
Yeah, your guy standing right there already said he's not gonna do
There
it.
is a time for what you're doing, and it is not right now. There's time for public comment at the end of the question and answer session. You are doing public comment. You need to wait until that time. Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll go here. So go ahead with a question. Again, questions, yeah.
On the bait fish,
Yep.
you said it's changing so we can take bait from the water and bring it back as long as we use it in that water. Is that blacklisted too?
No.
Okay, I weren't sure about
Depends on
that.
what part you're talking about. The eggs, there's a change for
No,
that.
just the bait fish. I thought you said something about you could,
Yeah, that was just a clarification about, we never stipulated whether fish had to be alive or dead if you were gonna take them off the water. So it's, semantics,
Yeah.
syntax,
Okay.
changing in the language, it's not, yeah, that's a pretty minor, what we consider a housekeeping change.
Right.
It's not really affecting anything that's already happening, we're just kinda, verifying it in the language.
yeah, thank you.
I think you had a hand.
Just a short comment, that fellow over there was talking about you having records on what you've done. This is just a comment, I'm from central Vermont, but I probably met a few of you and our friends have. When you did Berlin Pond, and you set a limit of 10, okay, you were out there a very short time. I know, I have your old articles, I have them all on file. You found out that a lot of the perch, you were talking about age and size, and a lot of them are larger, And in one of those articles, you said they were smaller. Very true. Okay? You also said that the average catch that came off of that pond was 7 to 11 fish with a few anglers catching a limit or fewer. Now, I've often wondered why. That pond's been there for years. It's been there for years. People have fished it for years, legal and illegally. I've been here since '64. The perch in that pond have never varied in size that much or the numbers. I really think when you were checking every fish on size, scale, taking samples of all those fish, if you recall, there was a lady and 2 men. There were 3 out there periodically, time to time. Okay, when you took those, you published an article that some said, you said, that some of those perch were 14 or 15 years old. I believe you. But the reason that pond, do you actually honestly feel that pond will come back to where you'll go to 25 or 50? Personally, I don't care if you do. Close it off completely might be the best answer if it's a water source. One comment to that. I've never seen a bit of garbage on that pond. You couldn't drive motor vehicles. You had to walk a mile. You earned every damn fish on that pond that you could get. But there is a problem. You don't allow anybody to keep any bass out of that pond. It's catch and release. You know what bass love. You and I both know that. It's loaded with pickerel. Pickerel and bass have that place unbelievable. I know, I've been out there in canoes, and if you're a halfway decent angler, you can do 15 to 25 bass in 3 hours. And they are nice fish. I can't see where what you did, okay, is gonna make those fish come back to where, I know you had a problem with the public, a water place supposedly. And I already said, maybe the best thing to keep peace was to keep it closed completely. But the only thing I ever saw out there, a lot of, were people walking dogs and leaving number 2 on the ice, not junk. And if you walked out there, you had to walk to where there was fish. You have crappie listed there in your book. I don't know, you tell me 10 people have caught 25 crappie out of that place in one time. And I fished with some pretty damn good fishermen. And if there's a lot of crappies in there, I'm not saying I'm against that 25 crappie rule or whatever, but I honestly think you overlook the idea of what else is in there that prevents those perch from maybe increasing. And I will tell you, there's plenty of perch in there. It can supply 25 perch if that's what you go to, okay? And in a way, you're keeping it close to bass fishing. I mean, there aren't a lot of people want to keep bass. Some people like to eat them, some don't, okay? But it's filled with pickerel, and in your Vermont fishing regulations, for Vermont, in this book, you don't even have a limit on chained pickerel at all. There's no limit here. There is over here on the next page.
Excuse me,
Okay, now,
excuse me, do you have a question?
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, the question is, you were talking about size. I can't see what you did there in the short period of time that it took. How long was it? A month? 3 weeks? You closed it off to 10. On a judgment of the value of the 3 biologists that took the records for that pond, and you closed it off before that year even ended, started, or whatever, if you check your records. Okay?
So what's your question?
And my question is, okay, I'm telling you, why don't you feel, I don't know about styles, that place can't support a catch of 25 fish? What's your real reason behind it?
Yeah,
And you did a study on it, and what I just told you are exact quotes. I have the articles, and I've written to you about it.
Can you clarify, are you asking if Berlin Pond can?
Just that one place for now.
Just
Because you did mention Berlin Pond on your presentation.
The proposal for Berlin Pond is no change in the regulation.
Right, I understand.
It's gonna stay at 10.
And my question is, why wouldn't you go to all ponds, including that pond?
At 10 or at 25?
From 10, if it's gonna be 25, fine. If it's gonna be 50, fine. I personally don't think there were a lot of people taking 50 perch out of there at one time. There may have been a few, there always is.
So I think I can answer your question,
Okay.
if I understand it.
Okay.
Proposal is to leave Berlin Pond under the regulation that's been a test water
Correct.
since the Supreme Court ruled that it was open to fishing.
Yeah.
And the reason that was put on was to try and protect the large fish that were already there.
That's correct.
And that's why we're leaving that 10 perch limit on for Berlin Pond.
Well, how do you see it getting better? If they remain about the same size? You're not reintroducing more.
No,
It's
it
like a
wasn't-
human, they produce less kids when they get older, and older birds produce less eggs. And if they get consumed by the bass,
I
pickerel,
think
bull
you and I
eggs.
should have a long conversation at the end of this, but I'd like to let other folks
Yeah.
talk. But the regulation proposal is to leave Berlin Pond at 10
Okay,
perch.
I guess that my suggestion is if you're gonna do 25, then that place ought to be open for 25 too. I don't know about size.
We'll take recommendations, public comments in just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure, right now, we want to make sure everyone understands what the proposed
But my
changes
point
are.
was, there are some records on that.
I think what he's trying to get at is he doesn't understand where you guys come at, that some bonds are alright for 25 fish, some bonds are alright for 10. That's what he's trying to get at. Your question is what he's asking. He wants to know where you guys are coming up. Berlin Pond's only good for 10 fish, but your other ponds right now are good for 50.
And you're saying it was the age, older fish, bigger fish.
The
So
large-
you're concerned about bigger fish. How do you get the little ones back here? And you did a study,
We don't want the little ones back, we want the big ones.
so it'll always remain the same.
And that was the goal. The goal wasn't
How do
to
you
change
get
it,
big deer
it
without
was
small
to
deer?
protect the large fish that were already there.
How do you get 80-year-old people without young people?
All right, wait, I'd like to restructure this. Who here has a question about the proposal that they would like clarification on before we go into the public comment period?
Yeah, the one in the way back there.
Mr. Schroeder, and Schroeder.
Yeah, do you know how many inland ponds and lakes we have in Vermont?
Not off the top of my head.
Nope, sorry.
You say it's over 100?
Yeah.
And how many of those ponds or lakes have we studied for panfish?
We have some panfish sampling data from a lot of them.
When you say some, do you have a specific number or is it just some?
We have some data, so, you know, we might have set some gill nets back in the 60s, for example, on a pond, and we caught, you know, maybe there was a dozen perch that were caught. So there's some data there, and then maybe we did something again in the 90s on that pond. So it's just scattered throughout. There's not really been a consistent study. There's like little bits of data here and there.
Yes. Why are you including white perch, which are terribly invasive in any, if they get in any water body, why would you want to put a limit on it?
Yeah, we have limits on other species that aren't native, like brown trout, rainbow trout. Our bass aren't native to most of the state. Northern pike aren't native to most of the state.
But when you found out white perch were in Champlain, were you bothered?
That might have been before my time, but yeah, probably.
John, you found out white perch came from Champlain, were you bothered?
Was I what when I found out?
Bothered.
Bothered? They came into Champlain in 1984. I started in 1997, so they've been well established long before I got here as a biologist.
How about gobies?
But yeah, I mean, any invasive fish species that we could prevent from getting into a water, we would want to do so. Because there's always going to be some kind of cascading effect that they bring. But I'm not sure. So you're asking why we're including white perch in the proposed limits. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid comment that you should say so during the comment period so we can put it in the record.
If you're gonna, we're talking about crappie here, and we're gonna put limit on crappie, which potentially are invasive or non-native in any pond, except for Champlain or maybe a couple others in the state. So why would you put a limit on them if they're not even native to these ponds?
That's not being changed.
So if I put black crappie into Sackwoods Pond, if I did, which would be against the law, as soon as they're established there, which they would be, there's a limit on them?
This would go for sunfish, bluegill, perch. You'd be limiting those
Yep.
fish too.
Yep, it'll be the same limit. Mhm.
Eliminating
Yep.
invasive species.
All right, there was a hand back there. Yeah.
Yes, for the bait fish receipts, if you're eliminating the timestamp, does that mean it's still good only for 10 days, or is it?
Yeah, it would be just the days instead of like to the hour or minute that, you know, it currently kind of is assumed to be because there's a time on it, so, yeah.
Just need a clarification, Judd. I don't, as you know, I'm a fly fisher, you know me. Open water in Vermont, bait fish, do they have to be dead?
Open water,
Open water, if you're using bait fish by trolling or any other means,
No.
do they have to be dead?
no, they could be alive.
Why so? State of Maine has done this for years,
Mhm.
use dead bait only.
Mhm.
Why does Vermont don't adapt that? You can keep a lot of problems.
Yeah,
out of our water.
well, the brook trout ponds, you can't use any fish as bait, live or dead.
Right, I'm aware.
Yeah, so that's what, like 20 ponds or something have that rule. But if it's not a pond with wild brook trout, we don't, it's just, you know, use your bait live or dead.
In the state of Maine, it's statewide.
Yep, thank you.
How about just a quick comment on bait fish?
If it's a comment, you could do that during public comment. That way the board gets the
No, it's a
benefit
question.
of hearing all of
You're
it.
talking about
Okay,
bait fish smell.
yep.
That bait fish, or is it a regulation fish? No limit on smell.
Mhm.
Can you catch them in a trap?
No,
Okay.
hook and line only.
Okay, but some states have a quart limit, half quart,
Yep,
50.
Yep.
You have nothing.
yep.
Most of the smell in central Vermont, you guys put in.
Mhm.
You can catch them, eat them, use them for bait in that pond, correct?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, why would you not have a limit on them? Aren't you interested in what the big fish, trying to go to 24 inches on acre,
Mhm.
what they consume, that's when they're making fish.
Mhm.
And yet, I mentioned pickerel, but you also don't have a limit on smell.
Mhm.
But you're
Yep.
gonna put a limit on whitebird.
Yep, yep, we're not concerned about
You
smell.
call them invasive.
I think I saw another hand, maybe a
Yeah.
question, hopefully, yeah, go ahead.
Justification on, especially the panfish one, seem mainly scientific. Do you guys work with any team that gathers economic information, especially with the business brought to many of these shops? I mean, I personally, my experience, let's say my own data, I spent $250 at their shop buying their rods. I went to their shop because I sold my fish there. Same thing down at the bait shop closer to Castleton. I stopped in that shop. Are we weighing a market that is already depleting since the 80s? Like, is there concern for the livelihood here? I mean, we say with these guys that 90% of the fish come from Champlain. I haven't been asked where my fish were coming from when I sold them, so I'm concerned where that came from. So if 70% are coming from the inland waters, you guys have the ability to take them out of business. Like, are you considering that? Whether it be you guys, understand you're mainly scientific, but are you working with an agency that weighs the economic value of people's lives?
Yeah, it was over 90% came from Champlain, which means that less than 10% would come from other waters.
And just to answer your question, that's based on the fish buyers' reports that we receive. They report the percentage of the fish they're buying that come from Champlain versus inland waters. So that's based on those annual reports.
I've never been asked.
When you sell a fish, you're supposed to be asked because it's one of the required reporting items on the annual reports that the buyers send to us. And every report we get It has a percentage breakdown based on all the fish that they bought and where they say those fish came from. So we can only report what is being sent to us on those forms.
Just for clarification on that, do we ask him where he caught his fish? He wouldn't tell us.
Yep, we know that it probably happens.
We had a couple folks that haven't had a chance to ask questions yet, ma'am.
Yes, for the application for the licensed state and out-of-stater, they want to sell fish. So say they do their license and the endorsement on it, but on the license, doesn't it just ask for their mailing address? It doesn't ask for their physical address, right? So could some of these people use mailing addresses of Vermont, but really be residents of other states, or, you know, not really telling where they really do live? I mean, if a person comes in all the time and they're selling fish, a lot of fish, and they are using a mailing address and their address is in New York, you know, where they physically live, but they're close to the Vermont border, and they're selling tons and tons of fish and also, by the way, it's cash. You get paid cash, right? Think about, it would be really lucrative to like leave in, as a comment, I shouldn't, I was just only ask questions. So my question is, do you verify where they physically live or just require their mailing address?
When somebody buys a license, they're required to put their actual state of residence in there. It doesn't mean that we are going to follow them home and 100% verify. But yeah, there's a signed affidavit that they swear that the information they're putting on their application to buy a license is correct.
Question, Bert? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll let Eric.
No, sorry, the gentleman behind you.
I see that you're closing quite a few brooks for the fish to spawn naturally and to have more time to do it or whatever. I was wondering if any of that had to do with the possible closing of the hatchery in the future here? And would you likely see more of that? Or?
No, these proposals aren't at all related to the potential closure of the Salisbury hatchery. Okay, couple more questions and then we'll switch to the public comment period. Yes. Yes.
Based on your ag proposal, people before can take them home and keep them. You don't see any problems with that as far as diseases or other stuff coming down the road on that?
Sean, do you know more? You're talking about using the eggs as bait?
Yeah, before you could use them that same day, now you guys are proposing you can take them home, freeze them, do whatever you want to do with them. Ugly won't freeze them because they won't. You guys see any problems with issues coming up down the road because of that?
Well, there's no emerging diseases that we know of that would be, you know, potentially transmitted that way, but the basic premise of bait fish regulations and restricting the movement of it in the past have been exactly that, you know, concerns over the fact that something could be in a fish in one water body or watershed and be moved somewhere else. In the 2008 version that was really restrictive, that basically stopped all wild harvest of bait and movement throughout the state, was addressing that, but because of a really bad disease we were watching explode in the Great Lakes called viral hemorrhagic septicemia. Never got here, fortunately. And so we've been sort of stepping back a little bit, like I said before, you know, kind of reinstating those opportunities to move fish, but within certain boundaries now. We have the east zone and the west zone that's kind of divided by the Green Mountains. We're sort of assuming that a lot of those watersheds and movement that, you know, might happen within that east and west side of the state has maybe probably already happened. And we're also trying to put a lot of faith back on the anglers and some trust that they know there's a risk there. You know, we're allowing them to, you know, do it to some extent, but, you know, that they're not going to take something from Champlain and go to Magog with it. You know, there's nothing we have out there that's going to be able to stop them from doing that, but it's that educational part of the regulations that helps people hopefully understand that there's a risk there and those rules are in place for a reason. And, you know, what you said very well could happen. But, you know, with the way we have it set up.
Give a shorter answer?
Yep.
Yes, there is a risk. Anytime somebody takes fish away, you're trusting them to bring it back. That same allowance is there for the fish themselves. So now people can do with the eggs what we're already allowing them to do with the bait fish themselves. Take them home, bring them back. There's an element of risk, there's an element of trust there. But yeah, it is a change. We had one more question over here.
Yeah, it seems, wasn't there gill nets run on panfish this summer in Vermont? Wasn't there gill nets run on panfish this summer in Vermont?
For sampling panfish?
On Bombay.
We did, so we did fish community assessments. We've been doing those for a while on Champlain. A couple of years ago, we expanded those down below the bridge, and those do target yellow perch and white perch. They don't catch any of the sunfish very well. That was gill netting. What you might have heard about was some studies that I started as a result of this, more emphasis on collecting data for panfish. I did trap netting, wasn't gill nets, and I did three waters last summer in my area of Vermont, and I started with bombazine and 2 small ponds, Fern Lake and Burr Pond.
Now, it seems like the email I got, stated by you, said that the netting information you got was more accurate than getting creel surveys or getting information from, say, some couple hundred commercial fishermen.
Did you send me an email?
No, you guys sent me an email.
I sent you an email. I don't recall that. Was it just to you, or was it?
No, that was a broad one bragging how your study showed how panfish are doing in the state of Vermont, and gill nets are a great way to assess lake trout, Lake Champlain, killing 20, 30-year-old fish.
I'd like to, you can talk to me after and show me maybe if you still have a record of that email so I can understand what you're looking at, but there was nothing that went out wide that had any kind of conclusion statewide, coming out of those 3 waters that I did last summer.
What was your results of your study there?
We're getting off target again, then. So we're going to switch now into public comment period. We've got the sign-up sheet. We'll go down that in order for the folks that said that they wanted to make public comments, and give you each 2 minutes. Again, there's unlimited ability to comment online. If you want to send a long email, you can also contact the board members directly. The email is in the handout that was at the back. But for tonight, it's comments to the board on the proposed changes, what you like, what you don't like, what you think should be different. And we'll be taking notes, so we might ask you to repeat yourself. If we do, we'll give you more time. Sean's got the list.
Yeah, so we got 18 people signed in tonight. Only 5 said they did not want to talk, so I'll just start at the top here. Kent? Yep. All right.
And if you can, when you come up, if you can just state your name and your town of residence, please.
Yep.
My name's Kent Hedberg. I live in Morristown. I agree with most of what's going to happen here. I think getting ahead of this before it gets bad is the right way to go. Because usually what happens is that fishery collapses before it gets better, and now you're trying to backtrack. Look at the North Atlantic cod fishery. That collapsed, and they're still trying to recover from that, and that was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. So I think getting ahead of it before it collapses is the best option. That's my comment on that, so thank you.
Okay, the next person is Dennis Thompson.
I support all these changes. I think it's a happy medium.
If you could just say your name and time.
Oh, Dennis Thompson, Westminster, Vermont. Lived here, fished here all my life. like I said, I think this proposal is good for both the commercial guys. You're still able to fish Champlain. You know, everybody's always saying that's where they get most of their fish and not inland. So you're not losing a lot. The other thing is, a lot of us have been fishing all over the state for a long time, and we've seen a decline in the quality of the fish. You know, and I can fish, I can catch fish, no problem. We go to New Hampshire, their panfish, their crappie are way better and than here. As far as these guys saying native fish, why are we protecting these fish that aren't native? We protect bass, we protect brown trout, we protect rainbow trout, walleye, and northern pike in waters where they weren't native. Native does not equate to their importance and value as recreational sports fish. By that logic, there should be no regulations on brown trout, rainbow trout, or others anywhere in Vermont. Should we take and kill as many as you want? You guys would be the first ones to scream about crappie going away. They said, you know, let's kill all the crappie. Huh? But anyway, you know, people would lose their minds if we went after trout like that. And I don't think we want to go back in history, and commercial fishing has wiped out a lot of fisheries in the country.
Thank you.
Yep. Rodney Elmer?
My name's Rod Elmer. I'm from Northfield. Fished here my whole life. Got a good chance to know most of you in one form or another, and I'm glad I get to say something. Nature's a complex thing, and it's very important that we all have a say in it. And I like this system. I don't trust any one person with my wildlife. I trust everyone with my wildlife. We don't all know it all, and we don't all maybe agree a lot, but the main thing is that the North American model says that we don't sell away our wild things and wild places, and that we love them. And it's important that we gather enough information to make good decisions. And I'm not sure how much information it would take for us to be able to make a good decision about a lot of these things. But the trout thing, absolutely agree with that, especially those streams and places where they're doing well. You want to leave them alone, make sure they do. Berlin Pond and Stiles Pond are also good examples of not overfishing and what it could produce. There's no doubt that there's a lot of pressure on a resource. You can't even take it out of a boat without almost getting run over by another boat. So, like, there's a lot of people using things, and we have to be cautious about it. And I'm happy that the department is making the cautious thoughts about this. And obviously, we need to get some more information. When you don't know it all, it's hard to make a good decision. And I don't know what that level is when you know enough to make a good decision. And it's pretty obvious we don't know a lot yet. But I appreciate all the work the department has put in, and I'm happy about especially the trout situation, and you guys are doing a good job there. The rest of it, we'll have to just wait and see. I don't envy you and what you got to go through. It's pretty tough, but in the long run, I think it'll work out. Thank you.
Paul Dunkley.
Paul Dunkling, Heinsberg, Vermont. So the limits as far as panfish go, the department hasn't showed me any data to back up what they're pushing here. You guys, every time we ask you about data, you guys backpedal. Seems pretty sly to me. Bluegills, sunfish. I bet if we asked that question in this room 20 years ago, how many of you people actually ever kept
or ate a bluegill or sunfish before there was a commercial market. And I'll bet it would be very few hands, because the commercial market is what actually made northern people start fishing bluegills and sunfish. Nobody fished them 30 years ago. When I was a kid, we caught them and we threw them on the bank for the seagulls. And I bet everybody in this room did that. But you want to protect them on ponds. And Dennis talks about these 10-inch bluegills. I bought panfish for 35 years. And I'll bet you 10-inch bluegills, I'll bet I haven't seen 200 pounds of 10-inch bluegills in my whole 35 years of buying fish. 9-inch maybe, 10-inch no. 10-inch bluegills come from the south where the water's warm, and you biologists know that. But you push the data like you think you can grow these huge sunfish in this northern environment, and it's proven it doesn't happen. Certain ponds grow big fish. You guys never bring up Carmine. Carmine produces tons of fish every year, and guess what? The size stays big every year. Shelburne Pond always produced hundreds of fish, thousands of fish, until you guys put a limit on. Now they all die off and go to the bottom, so nothing can live in there because there's die-offs every year.
Thank you.
Brian? Brian Dunkley. Yeah, no, he was asking us.
I'm Brian Dunklin, Heinsberg, Vermont. I think a lot of these laws are jumping way too hard without looking into some data. Because growing up fishing Shelburne Pond, used to go there, catch 1.5 pound, 2 pound yellow perch all the time. You guys put a 50 fish limit on it and you crippled the pond and it still hasn't recovered. Growing up there, never was there bluegills in that pond. Now there's bluegills. I'm a commercial fisherman, I live close by, I didn't put them there. So how are you guys to say that commercial fishing are moving these fish around for more opportunities to make money? That's biased on your end. It's just as well as Dennis Thompson here could go and put them in just because he wants to catch them for fun where nobody else fishes. You guys need to do the data, put the time in, get the actual facts before you start pushing these laws down people's throat, ruining work opportunities, ruining what little bit of revenue a little kid might make in the summertime fishing off the dock to go make a couple bucks to buy a candy bar in the store or something like that. I know several kids that would be upset if they couldn't do it. No different than running a bottle route in the summertime. That's all I got to say.
Did you say in Shelburne Pond, was it bluegills or just sunfish that you said showed up?
It's got them both, but bluegill just showed
The
up.
one that showed up. All right, thank you.
Now, to add on to that, I'm not a biologist. You guys should have known that before me. I don't have a PhD. You guys don't listen to me.
Thank you.
I think it's Ken Cattles, is that right?
I appreciate this opportunity. I just want to thank
Can you do your name and?
Ken Coolis, Berrytown. My comments are specifically directed to the central Vermont area, as far as the Connecticut River and the area around here, on your limits and what you'd like to do with them. But I personally feel a bullhead limit, a rock bass, white perch, I don't think you can name me 5 ponds that have a high quantity of white perch in them that deserves a 25 limit. Crappie, you already have it, so why fix it? The bluegills and a pumpkin seed, I grew up on them. I grew up on a bullhead. I grew up on a white perch in western Mass. But I can personally tell you, there's a list of ponds real quick. Curtis Elmore, okay, Maury, Fairleigh. Greenwood, Hall Spawn, Harvey's, Marshfield. You want me to keep going? There's all the perch in the world you want in there. Some are medium, some are large, some are good. Sometimes you catch 20, 25. I don't sell. I keep some farmers happy.
nothing they love more than that to allow you to go onto their land. I think it's important for education for kids. Spent 30 years in education. Probably took 15 trips of busloads of kids out from Williamstown High School fishing on the lakes during a spring day. Girls and boys, I think we need to do more of that. I think we need more participation. I think license sales are down. I have no comments on the bait restrictions and so forth, but I honestly feel, I think it's fixed fairly well. I don't know how much more you have to fix it, and I wonder where all the board's comments come from, and I hope it's not a personal decision that you're making because you have a group of individuals that feel that it's proper. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yep. Annette Spalding.
Your name and hometown first.
Hello, my name is Annette Spalding, and I'm from Rockingham, Vermont. I'm an avid scuba diver. I've been diving for over 35 years in the Connecticut River, serving on the underwater rescue team, also an honorary trustee of the Connecticut River Conservancy. And my comments tonight are about the commercial fishing. But first I have a comment to Paul. Paul, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what town you're from, but I have to tell you, I've been diving an average of 117 dives a year, sometimes more. And there are a lot of gills, bluegills, that are more than 8 inches large. I just want to let you know. They always hang around a lot of the structures that we have underwater from the logging. So maybe where you're getting the fish purchased from, they don't have them. But let me tell you, I see a lot of them. And now I've seen sturgeon, which is really exciting. So I'm for the proposed changes. I want to thank you very much tonight, Fish and Game, for doing this. I appreciate it, listening to pros and cons from everyone. And also, I wanted to just say, for the proposed changes, I am for all of the proposed changes. I'm just very concerned about the commercial fishing. Paul, I have one question for you. When you pay the people...
This is just comment period. If you want to talk Paul directly afterwards.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Comments for the Fish and Wildlife Board.
Okay, I have a comment then for Fish and Game, or a question, I guess. When buyers sell their fish to, when the sellers sell their fish to buyers, how are they paid? Are they paid cash, check, or whatever?
Again, this isn't question and answer time.
Okay, all right, sure. Okay, I just wanted to be sure that we're using physical addresses on the site. And when I looked at the online license site, it just showed like email and mailing address. I didn't see physical address there. And that was pretty much my concern there. And also, I'm very happy about the license, having the endorsement. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Kevin Lawrence.
Kevin Lawrence from Newbury. I'm a former board chair. I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I'm in favor of the bait fish changes. It's really a liberalization of it that is coming a long ways from where it was. I appreciate that. Trout regulations don't bother me a bit. I'd like to see Dog River be fished by me so I could take home a fish someday, but we'll see about that. In terms of the panfish, I'm really disappointed that we don't have a baseline. We have no way of measuring where we are today to say we're doing better 5 years from now. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that it's all narrative, it's people's stories and not necessarily based on data. And for a department that's been working on this panfish issue for a couple of years, I think it's very disappointing to show up at a meeting and tell us we want to maintain what we have without explaining what we have, what the limits are, what the boundaries are of what we're going to have in 5 years with these regulation changes. It's inappropriate. I'm really disappointed we only have one board member here. I'm glad you're here, sir. However, that's inappropriate as well. You should be hearing these public comments in person. There should be 5 or 6 of you here, really, and that's a problem. But hopefully we can adjust that. Many of us will show up at the board meeting in April and have a chance to have more comments to hopefully a full board. That's what I have to say, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Jordan Schroeder.
Jordan Schroeder, Bristol, Vermont. I just want to state that the Fish and Wildlife Department is very biased against commercial fishing. You know, they say they have very little evidence. They don't have an exact number. In fact, for all we know, they don't have any. So another thing, you know, we also don't know which ponds they're invasive in, that these fish are invasive in, or not native. We also, you know, we don't know the exact percentage of where or what percent is coming from Champlain, what percent is coming from inland waters. I did pretty successful. I can tell you right now, Dennis, I did pretty dang good on inland water this year. Yeah, you'd be real happy. Oh yeah. Yeah, I caught them all. Yeah. So, and I sold them too. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right to the Dunklings. Oh yeah. So, you know, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Jonas?
Hello everyone, I'm Jonas. I'm from Bristol, Vermont. I go to UVM. I study wildlife and fisheries biology for my first 2 years till transferring to business. So I feel like I can apply a mixed form of knowledge here. I'm a little concerned about the precedent that we're setting, especially with enforcing the North American conservation model. This is the same model that PETA and the Protect Our Wildlife organization is using. Without data and saying we're projecting, I think it's concerning because using their very same ideology, they can push just what they want to do. I think the board members, every single one of us, the biologists, should be concerned about that because the involvement with science disappears just with that. Lastly, I think non-native species such as white perch. I caught a white perch 4 years ago in Moncton Pond. It's concerning that these same species are going to be protected. I think that from now on, a change in any population in their species and what is in their pond, they should not be protected by any means. If I put crappie in Sayon Pond, they're going to be protected, and I can't wait until that happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett?
Hi, I'm Fred Schroeder. I live in Bristol. I raised the two boys there, and I raised them selling fish. And they made a little money. We don't make an income off of it. We do it for fun. And I'm very proud of my guys. I sold my first fish when I was 12 years old to raise seafood. Yeah, I think it was Brian. It was Paul's father that I sold my fish to, a half a pail of smelt. I have a background in fisheries and wildlife biology. I worked with Sean Good. I worked with Eric. I worked with several other employees who are still employees of the department. I worked as a creel survey clerk back in the mid-1990s, and I also worked on the Melisira gill netting lake trout. I killed thousands of lake trout, Paul. How do you like that? The ones you try to catch every day. Okay, so anyhow, I hope you still love me after this. But so I know I have personal experiences with the fisheries biologists that I worked with that were personally against commercial fishing. And there are several people that are still working for the department right now. I could name you their names, I'm not going to, that shamed me personally when I worked for the Fish and Wildlife Department because I sold my fish. And if any of you are old enough to remember in the 1990s, the perch wars in Champlain, when the Canadians were literally run out of off the lake by our department and put a limit on the perch, a 1 bucket limit of perch for no reason. They had the data that said there was plenty of perch in the lake, but they still put a limit on the perch and ran the Canadians off, and ran a lot of commercial fishermen off. So what are we doing here? What are we trying to do? Didn't we go through this whole thing with crappies like 5 years ago, try to stop the crappies, sale of crappies a few years ago? Here we are again. So I just want to say I'm strongly against the laws of commercial fishing, and thank you. I'll see you at the next meeting.
Caleb Corey or Covey, not sure the last name. Caleb? I guess that's him.
Name and location.
Yeah, so my name's Caleb Covey, and I live in South Royalton. I didn't really think about what I wanted to say very well, but, so I'm a fishing guide. I care about putting people on fish, and I love catching panfish, and I love putting kids on panfish and everything, and I care about the fish population. I like the idea of not having commercial fishing and 20 fish, or 25 fish and a 50 fish limit, or whatever, 25 fish per species or whatever. And yeah, I just want to have kids catch fish in the future. That's pretty much it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
That's the last person who checked yes. There was a few people who checked no. Did anybody change their minds and they would like to?
I never signed it, but I'll, I didn't notice it at the door. I can
Oh,
sign it
okay.
now.
You want to come up?
Yeah, come on up.
Yep.
Yeah, please just give us your name and residence.
I'm Adam Dunkling, grew up commercial fishing, made a living out of it, tried to anyways, haven't made it successfully yet. Put a lot of effort into other things that I've done. You know, it's something when you grow up doing, it's a shame to take it away after this many years. You guys got a lot of traditions that you guys got for different things in Vermont that you try to keep, you hold on to, and now we're gonna take this one, we're gonna throw it away because of a few things, and the board can't even give us any data to back it up. I think you guys should do some more research. I've heard you guys say Berlin Pond, 10 fish limit, they're big fish. You got Carmine on the northern end of the state. Certain ponds, they grow big fish. Certain areas grow big fish. Certain areas grow so many fish, they overpopulate. You guys got the data, you've seen it. Some ponds, they just don't grow. Iroquois in Heinsberg is a great one to example. Things got a limit on it. You never catch any decent fish out of it. There's a few, but they just cannot do it because they're stunted, there's too many. Moncton Pond's a good example. There's plenty of them out there that shouldn't have a limit on it to contain, to be able to grow. That's all I get to say.
Are you also from Heinsberg?
Westford.
Thank you.
Yep. Can I just 30 seconds? I saw something yesterday that everybody here probably.
Before you start, we want to make sure anyone
Yeah,
who
okay.
wants to make a public comment has the opportunity. Is there anybody else who'd like to make an official public comment to the board? Going once? Going twice? All right, so that's going to be the end to the meeting tonight. We're having another hearing in St. Albans tomorrow, one in Rutland on Thursday, a virtual one next Monday, and we'll stay around for anybody who wants to ask us questions or talk to the board member who's here. Thank you all for coming.